If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. Well, for those of us that voted for President Trump this year and 2016, there were a lot of echoes of 2016 in what occurred yesterday. A lot of the same states won, and a lot of the same sense of feeling like you kind of beat the odds, you feeling like you kind of did the impossible, feeling like you kind of escaped a rigged game and still came out ahead. I don't mean to say that the election was rigged, but I mean to say that it seemed like everything, the news media, social media, you name it, the legal system, it seemed like everything was geared with seeking a certain result, and yet they didn't get that result. This time, though, it was even more pronounced because not only did President Trump have his largest electoral vote victory ever, but as you probably know by now, he also won the popular vote. So over the last 24 hours or so, I have found myself looking back a great deal on the days and hours after November of 2016 when Trump was elected. And I remember that the person that I had lunch with the next day was Jeffrey Lichtman. We had lunch with our friend and former boss, Sean O'Neill, big radio executive, and we did a whole debriefing. And that 1-hour lunch was one of the most fascinating conversations that I'd had about the 2016 election at that point and still to this day. Who knows if there are echoes of 2016 in 2024? Just maybe Jeffrey Lichtman might have something to add that's worth hearing this time around as well. So I'm very, very pleased to welcome back to the program veteran criminal defense attorney and the host of Beyond the Legal Limit, Jeffrey Lichtman. Jeffrey, it's great to talk to you again.
Frank, thanks for having me, and thanks for that great introduction, as always.
Jeffrey, you were someone that said that it was not going to be possible for Trump to win this election. At various points over the last 3 or 4 years, there were different reasons for that. We don't need to necessarily get through all of them. But in general, you said that DeSantis would be a surefire win for the Republicans, whereas Trump, for a variety of reasons, including the things that he says and him being so polarizing, was basically inviting the Democrats to have 4 more years at the White House. Are you surprised by the result of what happened yesterday?
I'm absolutely shocked. I was shocked as I was watching it. I didn't believe that it would happen. I figured that at some point the momentum would reverse, much the way it did in 2020, and it never happened. And then once it was over and sort of, I suppose, the fog that I had been in for so long sort of lifted, I realized, and this is what I had been saying for a while, I just couldn't understand it. How could anybody vote for this woman? She was an absolute zero on every level, and I could never understand why the polls had her ahead, the popular vote. I mean, the conventional wisdom is if somehow Trump could pull out the election, he would certainly lose the popular vote, and he absolutely obliterated her in the popular vote. And you realize, well, you've got a administration that she was a big part of, apparently, that was an absolute flop. They failed in every possible way, despite the lies that the mainstream media has been feeding us, Frank, that they were doing such wonderful things. They were just complete zeros on the biggest issues that matter to the great majority of Americans, which is the economy, immigration, foreign policy. I mean, these were 0, 0, 0. And then on top of it, she comes in, she doesn't pick up a single vote. She's anointed by these effete elites. They put her in. She refuses to discuss any of her policy that she's going to put into place. She claims that she's just like Biden, that she's refuses to say what she would do differently. And you look at it like, what sane person would vote for her? And you know, I always felt that they would stop him somehow from getting back into office, but apparently they couldn't. And then when you look at it, what happened objectively, she got the ass kicking, frankly, that she deserved.
The next 4 years, it's going to be not only Trump in the White House, but a Republican Senate. We don't know yet what's going to happen in the House. Are you optimistic from your policy goals and what you believe in? Are you hopeful?
I would say that I'm anxious. I'm hoping as opposed to hopeful. I mean, look, he had the first 2 years of his first term. He had the entire table as well, Frank, and he frankly didn't do much with it. And that's the reason why I've always been against Trump, is not because I necessarily was against his policies, but because he just didn't accomplish enough. He didn't work hard enough. You know, it took him forever to even fire U.S. attorneys when he came into office. I mean, he had the same lawyers that were picked by by Obama before. It was bizarre. So I'm hoping now that he learned his lesson and that he realizes that he's got to scorch the earth, because the last 4 years this country's been destroyed. He can't wait. This can't be something where he's just messing around and taking his time playing on Twitter. He's got to go from day one and tear this country apart in terms of the government, the FBI, the Department of Justice. The colleges and universities that he promised to clean up last time and didn't do a thing. You've seen how dangerous they've gotten. The foreign policy, our allies have been completely backstabbed so many different times by the Biden administration. We've got the Middle East is on fire. You've got Russia in Ukraine again. He's got to really work hard and fast, because he's got 4 years.
One of the things that was reported, and so far nobody from the Trump camp has denied this, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate. But one of the things that's been reported is that President Trump has apparently urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to wrap up this Israel-Hamas war by January 20th. What about that, Jeffrey? Hasn't this war gone on long enough? Why doesn't Netanyahu just wrap it up?
Well, what do you mean by wrap it up, Frank? Because if you wrap it up according to the way the administration wants to wrap it up, that means Israel just agrees to a ceasefire and allows Hamas to regroup and attack again, as they promised to do. They hide among civilians. It makes it very difficult for Israel to get to the Hamas members that are, embedded. And then you've got the administration that's been threatening Israel for pretty much a year now, saying if you don't feed the very killers that invaded your country, we'll stop giving you weapons. If you use bombs that are too big, we'll stop giving you weapons. If you go into Rafah, where the last of the strongholds of Hamas are, including the leader Sinwar, we'll stop giving you weapons, because we studied the maps, Frank, don't you know? Like, if you literally put a gun to Kamala Harris's head and ask her even to find the Gaza Strip, let alone Rafah, she would cackle hysterically and walk away from you. So it depends on what you mean by finishing the job. To me, finishing the job, it would take about 3 days. It would take about 3 days to finish the job in Gaza. I wouldn't need until January, Frank. So I can promise you, when a terror entity invades your country and massacres your people, and they're being directed and paid by Iran and supplied by Iran, Iran would take 2 days, and Gaza would take the third day. And that would be the end of it. You wouldn't need me until January to wrap it up.
But honestly, as a supporter of Israel, not only in the current conflict, but in general, are you optimistic that Trump's going to, for lack of a better description, do the right thing when it comes to Israel?
Well, I think he'll certainly do better than Harris would have done. I think a lot of pro-Israel people that supported Trump, and I did as well, I think you forget that what he really wants to be known as is the president where there's no wars under his watch. So I think he's going to apply a lot of pressure to Netanyahu to finish it. And that worries me a little bit. But at the same time, Frank, I mean, your point is well taken. I mean, it's like, enough already with this war. The problem is Israel has to be more aggressive. They have to treat the Palestinians the way the Palestinians have treated them. They have to treat the Palestinians the way we treated the fighters in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have to allow Israel to treat the Gazans the way they should be treated, which is they're an Iranian terror proxy. And that means you obliterate them. And listen, I know that there have been, 15 or 20,000 civilians that have been killed, but I think that the ratio is more like 20 to 1 civilians to terrorist or fighter in the Iraq war and Afghanistan. Israel's got to finish it off. And frankly, Hamas can surrender anytime it wants, Frank, and this thing ends. It could have ended a year ago. You say that the war has gone on too long, you should be directing your ire to Iran and Hamas.
I was really being somewhat facetious, given the fact that Trump's given Netanyahu this deadline to wrap things up by. I wasn't really saying, hasn't this gone on too long? But your point's well taken. Lastly, on the Israel front, and then I want to pick your brain on one or two other things. The defense minister in Israel was just fired. What's the story here? What's your read on this? It seems like a somewhat unusual thing to do in the midst of a conflict like this.
It happens. I'm reading, of course, all the liberals. One thing I would tell you to do, Frank, if you want to really enjoy yourself, I don't watch television, but I've watched MSNBC tonight for like 2 hours. I mean, I'm telling you, this is entertainment. Just the crying and the weeping and the lying and the gnashing of their teeth. They said that this Gallant was hugely popular in Israel and that Netanyahu firing him was such an outrage. He's not. No, he's really not popular at all. The guy backstabbed the prime minister in the war a zillion different times. This is not somebody that you can trust in a war, that he's backstabbing the leader of the country. You have to be unified. And frankly, I don't have a problem. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu.
Right.
And mainly the reason I'm not a fan of him, and this is for years, is that he allowed Hamas and Hezbollah to grow. He should have destroyed them years ago. He's never been tough enough on the terrorists that border Israel. And I'm not a huge fan of him now. That being said, I don't see anybody better than him. I think he's done a pretty damn good job of destroying Hamas. And if he felt that Gallant needed to be fired because the guy was not unified with what the prime minister, the leader of the country, wanted in connection with this war, he's got to go. That's just how it is, Frank. You can't have two people in charge that are diametrically opposed in a war, of all things.
We had you on this show, I guess about 6 months ago, talking about the Columbia protests, and you mentioned that you were representing this student, a Jewish student, who had been, reprimanded and I think either suspended or expelled. And it was reported just about 5 days ago that Columbia settled this lawsuit for $395,000. Now, obviously, I'm sure this student that you're representing had to suffer the indignity of, kind of being held up as a enemy of whatever, freedom, protests, Palestinian women and children, whatever he was being held up as. But I have to think that $395,000 for missing a semester, if that, I think that turned out pretty good for you.
Well, how do I say this carefully, Frank? I'm not going to comment on that. He was an IDF student. I'm not going to comment on the settlement or even if there is a settlement. Whatever you read, Frank, vaya con Dios, mi amigo. But I would say that my former IDF Israeli Jewish student who was suspended for 2 years, then it was reduced to 1.5, and then ultimately, can't talk about it, Frank.
Understood.
Everything's good here.
I bet it is. All right. Another case that you're involved in, I was actually just listening to this on the radio as I was driving to work, is a New York State police trooper was suspended They're investigating, apparently, an account of his being shot and wounded. I'm not sure what you can add here, but this state trooper was suspended without pay after they launched an investigation into his account of being shot while attempting to help a motorist on a Long Island highway last week. Apparently, they're saying that there's suspicion that he might have even shot himself. What can you tell us about this case here, Jeff?
Well, this is a tough one. It's obviously a very big case in Long Island. I don't know how big it is here, but it's huge over there. What can I tell you, Frank? Well, I'm doing my own investigation, I suppose, to try to find out exactly what happened because, respectfully, it is a bizarro story. But this is not a situation where, like a Sherry Papini, remember her, the woman who claimed she was kidnapped by, I think, some Mexicans, she said, and she was gone. And then there was a GoFundMe, and they made $1 zillion. This is not a situation like that at all. I don't know where this is going to fall out at this point, but this guy's a good guy. He was a decorated officer, and just an incredibly unfortunate situation in many different ways. I suspect that when it all comes out, people will not be quite as angry as they seem to be right now towards him. So I like him. I like his family a lot. They're good people. They were in my office today, and just sometimes bad things happen to good people, and I think that's what happened here.
It is interesting that hopefully this case gives you a new perspective on people that do things like fake their own kidnapping, particularly if they're radio talk show hosts who head a group of vigilantes, because I know you've been very tough on some of them in the past.
Frank, that's very funny. You're referring to Curtis Sliwa, who faked a kidnapping. I think he faked his own death. I think he was raped, he claimed. Any type of physical, abuse that occurred. He dropped out of a window from 14 floors, all of it were all lies. But that's a fair point. I suspect maybe I'll see things differently by the time the case is resolved. And I may give Curtis a very, very belated apology.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath on that one. Somehow I don't think Curtis should either.
No.
All right, lastly, I know you're representing Sean P. Diddy Combs' son, Justin. How do you see the case against his father, P. Diddy, going? I know he's in custody now. Like everyone else at the MDC, he's probably listening to us right now. What's your take on where that case is and what's developed in the press and the fact that there's all these civil suits against him now? Is that going to kind of poison the jury pool in a potential criminal trial?
I mean, of course. I think that there's a fraction, if any, of these civil plaintiffs that are going after him that are ever going to rear their ugly heads in a criminal courtroom because they're completely separate and most, if not all of them, are irrelevant to the criminal charges. However, they're just destroying him in the public opinion. And the jury that's going to be picked in this trial, I think it's going to be sometime next year. They don't know that they're the jury yet, but they're reading this stuff and they hate Combs because of it. And that's bad. That's bad. As a defense lawyer, you have to combat this. And this is what I did with Gotti. You remember back then we were constantly dealing with the press in an effort to sort of turn things. And I would get my defense into the media because I wanted it to sort of get baked in before the trial started so that people actually believed it was real. And it worked. I think by the time the trial started, people began to believe that this could be true, that he had left the mafia. The problem with this case is that every day there's another 25 lawsuits or some of the most ridiculous accusations that are not even close to being true, and I'm just not seeing any pushback in the media. We're talking instead about that he's got 1,000 bottles of lube that he may have bought from Costco. Just some of the. I just don't think that there's been a concerted, cohesive effort to set forth a theory of defense. And Frank. You take this kind of job, you take a case like this on, it's life and death. My view is if you're not willing to sacrifice everything in a case like this to win it, this probably isn't the case for you. And in my mind, I would have been a lot more aggressive with the media. I would have pointed out the ridiculousness of both the lawyers that are filing these lawsuits, the litigants, to point out that maybe, just maybe, this guy is viewed as a huge amount of deep pockets and that people, anybody and everybody is going after him with the thinnest of lawsuits. Instead, people read this stuff, Frank, and they think that it's all true. Guess what? It's not. They're not true. But what can you do? If you read it in the newspaper, Frank, what do people think? If you see it on TV, it's got to be true.
Just to go back to the Trump situation for a second and where it dovetails with the legal world, obviously his sentencing in the New York case by Judge Merchan is still pending. Now that he's going to be the next president, do you see Judge Merchan, who I'm assuming at some point you've probably appeared before,
yes.
Do you see Judge Merchan sentencing him to prison time?
I don't think he should give him prison time, and I'm not just saying that because he's the president, or even that I voted for him, because as you know, I didn't vote for him as a huge fan of Trump. I voted for him that he was much better than the alternative, which is a complete and utter DEI abortion disaster. But I think that there's a decent chance that I'll give him jail time because some of Trump's behavior in the courtroom, there was contempt situations, and he was disrespectful to the court at times. I'm hoping somehow that this judge realizes that there is a greater good here for the country, and giving him 6 months in jail is not going to be helpful to what I consider to be an important opportunity to unite the country. But I have to tell you, Frank, I haven't seen a lot of attempts by the left to try to unify the country. In the last week before the election, we were told that we were Nazis because we supported him, that the women who supported him were weak and stupid. I got to tell you, Frank, I've never seen a group of Americans that tried so hard to alienate the other side, and it's always the same people that are lecturing us, Frank. They're the ones that are wagging their fingers at us. They're telling us that we're garbage. Do any of them even have jobs? You know, it's funny. These are people. They're just useless people.
My sister, who I'm close with, I saw her at a family function on Saturday. She was appalled that I had voted for Trump. And she said, she lectured me for 15 minutes about every lie that he's ever told, every this he's ever done. And she says, at the end of the day, how can you vote for someone that's anti-woman and anti-gay? And then within an hour, I ended up at this, birthday dinner for a friend of mine. And, he invited a couple of people that I didn't know. And I end up sitting next to a lesbian couple that are 9,000 times more enthusiastic Trump supporters than I've ever been. And it just goes to show you that just maybe a lot of the narratives that these folks buy into may not be completely accurate.
Yeah. I mean, Frank, at the end of the day, people want a strong economy. They want to be able to feed their families. That's why Trump made inroads with every minority, because these people are just sick and tired of the identity politics. They're sick and tired of being told that they have to vote Democrat because it's the liberal thing to do. They're sick and tired of men playing in female sports. They're sick and tired of paying $12 for 12 eggs. They don't have any money. They see that the world is on fire. They see that all their money that should be going to them is instead being given to 10 million illegals that crossed in with an open back door and front door, and they had enough. And even the lesbians that you talked about, just like me, I have plenty of problems with Trump.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's not just Trump. It's his policies. And these two lesbians probably have 2 jobs, which is probably 2 more jobs than all the liberals that were there combined at this party.
Lastly, Jeff, is there any way? Give me a 2-part. Give me an answer to a 2-part question. Do you think Pete Alonso ends up re-signing with the Mets, and do the Mets sign Soto?
Well, these are the best 2 questions you've asked me, frankly, because I'm a Dodgers fan. I grew up a Dodgers fan, and this was a wonderful last couple of weeks for me, but I'm a Mets fan second. I think they sign Alonso. I thought that he was dead and going to be jettisoned for most of the season because he didn't have a good year, but he had some very, very big home runs in the playoffs at the end of the season. I don't think he's going to get a huge contract because I don't think he merits it anymore. I think he wants to stay in New York. But I think if they gave the guy 3 years, $90 million, Frank, which would not break them, he's still an incredibly important player to them, still gets the big hit when needed. I think they're going to sign him. So that's A. Because I just think he'd rather, 3 years, $90 million might be better than 4 years, $115 with Milwaukee, dying in Milwaukee.
Right. Well, there was speculation he might go to the Yankees as well.
I don't think he's going to go to the Yankees. I don't think they want another guy like that who's somewhat one-dimensional. He's a better version of Anthony Rizzo and not as good of a fielder, and they've already gotten rid of him. With regard to Soto, I've been saying this for a while. It's two teams. It's the Yankees or the Mets. The Dodgers have no interest or need for Soto. They've got other players that could fill in the gaps, like a Willie Adames, a shortstop from Milwaukee. I think it's the Mets or the Yankees. The problem is that he was happy with the Yankees. He got to the World Series. His batting position is such that he's got the Judge right there. So I think that it's protecting him. You're not gonna pitch around Soto when you have Judge right behind him. So that's not going to happen. I think that he's probably more familiar and comfortable with the Yankees. The difference is that Steve Cohen has more money than God. But if I were Juan Soto and you offered me, let's say it's 60 or 70 million a year for 10 or 12 years, I don't think that another 30 or 40 or 50 million is going to be enough to move him if he was happy with the Yankees. I suspect he wasn't. Frank, respectfully also, he's a pretty lousy fielder, even though he was a Gold Glove finalist. He made some really boneheaded plays in the World Series, minor stuff, but you could see fundamentally he's not the strongest. The Mets do need him, though, because they're really not that far away. They played the Dodgers very tough. They need some pitching. They need Soto. I think Steve Cohen's got to break the bank, but he tried it with Yamamoto to try to get him away from the Dodgers. It didn't work. He tried with Ohtani. It didn't work. Some people just would rather go to a certain franchise. And I hate to tell you this, Frank, I hope you're sitting down, that the Mets are really viewed in baseball as a little brother of the Yankees.
I believe me, as somebody that's been a Met fan my whole life, I'm well aware of that. As somebody that's had to deal with that Yankee fan arrogance everywhere I've gone, I get it. Jeffrey Lichtman, it's always a treat to talk with you. People should absolutely check out Beyond the Legal Limit, the podcast, and if they're in the habit of committing crimes, particularly if they've got a lot of money, they should absolutely have your number stored in their mobile phone. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thanks for having me, Frank, as always.
Thank you. If you want to comment on any portion of our conversation, you're welcome to give me a call. Our phone number is 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.